Hey, my name is Sean Saunders. Please, if you enjoy this video, take just a moment to go and subscribe to my YouTube channel entitled "In the Image of My Reflection." A lot of good topics on there. Hey man, we just want you to become a part of the team, okay? I need you to sign up now because before you know it, I'm gonna be taking off and you're gonna have to try to catch me. Traditional men versus modern day women. Traditional men versus modern day women. That's a topic of discussion I have heard being had across these social media networks. So a lot of people have a lot to say. So I just wanted to elaborate and expound on this particular topic. So there are a few things that we need to take into consideration before we even get started. There is no reason for either side, men and or women, there's no reason for us to vilify one side in order for us to esteem the value of the other. We now, today, have become competitors. We compete against one another regarding the value of our individual contributions. I say this all the time. Our roles of responsibility are different. And it is important for each side to understand that in order for us individually to become the essence of what it is God created for us to be, we have to learn how to appreciate the other side's contribution to whatever efforts we're putting forth and our need for their contributions in order for us to become the reality of what it is God expects. What am I saying? We need each other. So we have to understand that. Just because the environment changes, just because the world changes, the designated roles of responsibility that God has passed down to each of us, expecting for us to fulfill within the framework of the time that we share together, is still the same. So let me speak to the traditional man. Okay, tradition. Anytime we hear tradition, it speaks to a pattern of performance that we become accustomed to. Most people, when it comes to tradition, they follow the pattern that they're familiar with. So men that are traditional would happen to follow a pattern. So what are some of the characteristics of a traditional man? A man that wants love, a man that expects loyalty, a man that is assertive, a man that is dominant or possesses a dominance with regard to taking over a territory, and that territory falling under the influence of his authority. Not I'm controlling you, but dominance with regard to that. Competitive. Men are competitive by nature. Let me go back so we can understand it. So that's what a traditional man, a man that's loyal, he expects loyalty. He expects respect. Men need more respect. They need to be respected more than they need to be loved. Respect is how you express an attitude of love towards the individual or an appreciation for his individual contributions. So let me explain before I get into the framework of this. First of all, manhood and maleness, and I've always said this, are not the same. Not the same. Okay. The immaturity of manhood is maleness. I'm looking at scripture, the context of scripture. God calls Adam, or he creates Adam. When God speaks to Adam, he speaks to the man in the male. He creates Adam as a male, but he speaks to the man because the whole goal is for Adam to begin to express the reality of the man that lives inside of him in the reality or the framework of the reality that he exists in. So God speaks to that, hoping to encourage him to become the very essence of what it is he keeps speaking or calling him. There's a scripture in context in Genesis chapter 3 where a serpent, crafty, subtle, approaches not Adam, who's the master. If you do not know, anytime you name or whatever it is you give name to, or if you name anything that you name, you become the master over it. So Adam had mastery over the serpent that tempted Eve. The very closest thing to a man's heart is a woman. So the serpent comes and tempts the very thing that's the closest thing to the man's heart, because he knows that he doesn't have the authority to come and tempt the master of it, or the master over him. So in doing that, the scripture tells us that while she was being tempted, Adam was present. He was there beside her. Adam's passivity is what ultimately caused Eve to stand up and defend herself. Eve recognized that Adam was her defender, but Adam was passive, and he said absolutely nothing in the midst of her being tempted by a serpent right in front of him. So she lost confidence in her defender's defense. Because she lost confidence in Adam's ability to defend her, she ended up defending herself. God had never called and created for her to have to defend herself. It was Adam's responsibility to make sure that he was dominant over the territory that God had given him. Okay? Now, I'm not saying a woman is his territory, but she was in the space of the territory that he occupied. He was supposed to make sure, as the king of his territory, that he made sure not only were the things in that territory taken care of, but he had to also make sure that the persons in that territory exemplified an expression of his mind and his attitude. Women are of great appreciation and value to a man. I always say this: submission is harder on a man than it is on a woman. I want you to understand that. Submission is the relinquishing of your right as women to care for yourself, not because you can't. You can. Over to the responsibility of a man that God has declared worthy enough to bear up under the weight of your surrender and or your submission. Now, where did that go wrong? Men for years have been teaching that submission is a dominance over the woman and that her only responsibility is to obey whatever it is he says. That's incorrect. Submission is a woman's posturing position of power. It's her posturing position of power. Women, in your silence speaks louder than any words you can say out loud to a man. Your silence speaks louder to us as men than any words you can speak out loud to a man. The responsibility of individuals in relationships is to challenge the individuals, watch this, not to be the best versions of the person we need them to be for us. This is where that modern day woman comes into place. Eve's responsibility was to challenge Adam to be the best version of himself he was supposed to be for God. Because it's not until you're the best version of who it is you're supposed to be, or you're the best version of yourself you're supposed to be for yourself, for God. Let me rephrase that. It's not until you learn how to become the best version of yourself you're supposed to be for God that you'll actually be able to become the best version that you're supposed to be for other people. You have to first learn how to be the best version of yourself you're supposed to be for God. Then her responsibility was to challenge him to do that. In doing that, when she was being questioned and tempted by the serpent, she began to question her defender's defense. Women today, the modern woman, questions the ability of her defenders, the man that was supposed to be her defenders, his ability to defend her. And if women question that and they don't believe it's possible for him, a man, to defend the way he's supposed to, what they do is they take it upon themselves to do what it is do for themselves what it is the man has been unsuccessful in doing for years. So there are two roles of responsibility. The modern day woman asks questions. She can get it herself. She doesn't look to a man for the traditional values of what it is men were considered to once be providers. And now let me rephrase that. Some of them you do, but now you have these supposed boss women who want to go out here and make all this money and do all these things. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with challenging. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. As long as those questions and those challenges that you're presenting before the individual man or the men that you're with, as long as those challenges and questions are not dedicated to that individual or that man being the best version of himself he can be for you. The goal is for you to challenge and question that man so that he can be the best version of himself he's supposed to be for God. Because he'll never be good for you until he's first good for God or good with God. You have to challenge him to be that. And the problem today is the modern woman is more concerned about her own need as opposed to ensuring that God's need is met. God's need or God's desire has to be met before your desire and your need and or your want or your aspiration is met. The problem today is there's always going to be conflict between the two sides. Because when it comes to it, we've allowed ourselves to redefine what it is God has already clearly defined for us to become and to be. We are not operating within the framework of God's expectation and God's definition, of what we're supposed to be. Just because you're feminine or because you have a female anatomy doesn't necessarily mean that you matured into the responsibility of embracing the roles of your womanhood. And the only way your womanhood can be defined, as I always say, listen, the authenticity of your personal presentation has to be measured by a credible standard. We're measuring our standards by how much we get. I got the bag. I got to get the bag. That's all I hear. I watched the BET Awards yesterday. All I had, the bag, the bag, the bag. And every time the girls, the female artists got up, not all of them, but a lot of them shaking it behind, shaking it. I'm not gonna cuss, but this it's what? That's it. All you're saying is you need this. You got the gold digger pranks where the girls see the car and they automatically run. All I want is the money. Really? So when you underappreciate the value of who it is you are, then here it is. Now, I'm not saying that because you have some women who go out here and get it. They do a good job. And I don't think it's anything wrong with a woman wanting a man or being attracted to a man that's in the same vein as she is. He's working towards something because every man should be working towards something. Traditional men are supposed to be working toward their purpose. And the responsibility and role of a woman is to challenge that man to be the best in the purpose that God has created for him to exist in, to be the best version of himself. And within the framework of that purpose, here it is, she's able to live her purpose. See, watch this. A man, a real man, a true man, if he's operating in the purposes of God, what he's going to do is he's going to make sure that she doesn't have to worry about how to finance anything with regard to her purpose. See, because when he's doing the things of God, he's going to be supplied with a sufficiency that's more than enough, not only for him to do what it is he's doing, but to also accommodate for her to do what it is God has commissioned for her to do. But that can't be the end all of you just providing for me. There has to be an even exchange. Iron sharpeneth iron. You can't keep expecting a man because we keep saying traditional values. Men want loyalty, love. They want commitment. They don't want the woman at the with to have slept with 500, 400 people. The number of bodies, your body count is extremely important. Men and women are totally different. The value of a woman depreciates with the more individuals she decides to sleep with. It is. And I could even say that in context to the men. But because you are the gift, the value of the gift depreciates because the man is the one that's supposed to be approaching or coming after you. So what is it you're going to give to him that you haven't already given to everybody else? The more and more you allow to be taken from you, the less and less it is you have to give. the less and less sacred it becomes, because you've given to everybody else what it is you keep, or what it is you're trying to now say you've set aside for him. So it's totally different. Remember, women are receptive. You're receivers. Men make deposits into women sexually. We make deposits into women intellectually. You make deposits. Adam was supposed to make a deposit into Eve, but he didn't. So the very thing that he was supposed to protect, he didn't. So as a result of not protecting it, she saw fit for her to protect for herself what it is her defender was not defended. So he showed a lack of appreciation for her value. Men, we have to do a better job showing an appreciation. Remember, submission is me understanding and having a great appreciation for the value of this individual. Meaning, God said it's not good for me to be left alone to myself. So he provides me with what it is I need, the help and support. If she is the help that you need, remember, whatever it is God has commissioned for you to do, you can't do it without her. Ladies, likewise, God created for you to be that support toward him. Watch this, to make life easier for you. Men, you should want a man to protect. If war breaks out, you want a man to fight. It doesn't make any sense. Like, get it. It's okay. That's the role of a man, because God created a man to do that. I'm a firearm holder. I'm a licensed firearm holder. So when I go out, I'm not the police. So just because I have power, because I have something, doesn't mean that I have the authority whereby to do it. Ooh, come on. Girls, women, just because you have power to do something doesn't mean that God has authorized with you with the authority to do it. God has authorized men with the authority to do things, not to have dominion. God has not created for us to have dominion over each other. That was never created. He didn't create for you to be my slave. Submission is not to be a servant. It's not. And this is, I don't want to get off track. This is where we go wrong with the modern day. Today's woman is different. She's totally different. The independence, which is understandable because we've had situations where, men have done what it is they've done, misogyny, different things like that. But this independence, but the feminine movement, this women's movement, we don't need men. We need each other, because your existence is nullified if you exit out or kill or emasculate or deny the reality and the contribution that men bring to this realm of reality or world that you live in. It's meaningless, and vice versa. Likewise, we need each other. And it's important for us to understand that evolution is something that is inevitable. But evolution changing into whatever is necessary in order for you to conform to the realities of the environment you live in is based on context. Some of you are evolving outside of the context that God created for you to evolve in. Remember, God is too big for you to understand the fullness of who it is God is within this life that you live. You don't have enough time. So as much as you think you're outgrowing God, you can never outgrow God, because God is too big. You can't do it. And now you have women who are outgrowing God. You think you know what's better for you than God knows what's best for you. So you take it upon yourself to go out and get these things, and then you find yourself upset, frustrated, and mad, claiming that you're happy, really not happy. And, that's what it is. We don't need y'all. And that's a lie. We need you. You need us. We need each other. The only way this works is if we learn how to work together. We got to figure this thing out. We got to figure out how to meet somewhere in the middle and understand, yes, we have to have these conversations. It's okay for you to want to be a boss. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we don't have to diminish the value of the man in order for, the excellency of your status to be appreciated. It's okay for you to ask questions, because as men, Adam should have asked the question, or he should have responded to Eve when she was being asked those questions. She should have been comfortable enough to be able to go to him and have that conversation so they could talk about it together. Not that he's ruling over her, but as couples, we need to have these conversations because we need to understand both perspectives, because everything that we do not only affects the individual space that we live in with regard to our anatomy, but it also affects the other spaces that reside around us, the men, the women. So we have to make sure that we understand these things. And until we understand, so traditionally, men, from old, I want you to understand that just because you hear the word traditional, don't lock men into a space where it's impossible for them to be able to evolve. Evolution, however, is predicated on context. I have to evolve within the determined context that God created for me to exist in. So you have to evolve under God's plan and not under your own. You can't become whatever it is you want to be just because you want to be that and then justify it with the logical reasons that are contrary to what it is God declared and created for you to be, because you didn't create you, God created you. So God is the only one that can determine for us what it is. So the modern day woman, yes, we appreciate you asking questions. We appreciate your assertiveness. We appreciate your education. We appreciate all those things. Okay. To the traditional men, we appreciate you standing forefront on some of the principles. However, some of the principles that you thought you knew, perhaps through a lack of education, you went out there and put it in practice in a way where it wasn't applicable or applicable, or it was unrealistic. So those are things that we have to work on and fix and make sure that we come together. But the fact of the matter is we need each other. And until we realize that, nothing's going to change.